Hey everybody, AC here, and welcome back to another episode of Getting Hyped for Sonic Frontiers. Or still hyped for Sonic Frontier. And in this one, I just want to talk a little bit about the third major update that is set to game. In the last video, I mentioned how I'm pretty sure the final update will come out probably in either October or November. I feel like those are and this final update is supposed to have new playable characters and a new story. Um, and it showed images of Tails, Knuckles, and Amy all in their digitized forms, and Sage, and the temple from the final island. So, I have three theories as to what this story could be. Either one, it could be it could be a completely new story that takes place post game, um, and it could end up we could end up seeing another island, and maybe Tails, Knuckles, and Amy all come to this island without Sonic, and they all have to work together to discover the mysteries of this sixth island. Uh, and perhaps Eggman has all perhaps spoilers for those who haven't finished the game. Um, if you don't want to be spoiled, then just mute for a bit. And when I wave my hands like this, then you can unmute. The spoilers are done. But spoilers. So at the end of the game, Sage sacrifices herself in order to defeat the final boss of the game. And it's very emotional, very impactful. And Eggman, after the credits, ends up getting her AI back. He gets her AI back, and we know that he's going to end up making a physical form for her again. So, my thought process is that after all of that's done, perhaps she will end up going with Tails, Knuckles, and Amy in order to discover the mysteries of this brand new island that has popped up. That is a possibility. Okay, spoilers are done. You guys all back? Good. So that is my theory for the first one. For what could possibly be the first kind of DLC story. That Sage is working together with Tails, Knuckles, and Amy in order to uncover the mystery of this sixth island. However, I think that one is the least likely of the three scenarios, simply because that would be a lot of work. They'd have to build an entirely new island from scratch, on top of adding new playable characters and new mechanics to master. So I don't think that's going to actually be the case. It would be cool, and it is a possibility, but I highly doubt it's going to happen, especially given how this is supposed to be a free update. I don't think that they will go that route. Option two. Option two is that we basically are going through of the story of the main game again, but we're seeing it from Tails, Knuckles, and Amy's point of view. We're seeing it from their point of view, where while Sonic was running around each island doing whatever he wants to do, we're seeing what they did, like the story from their perspective and what they did while Sonic was running around. Um, so yeah, I think that could be a possibility. And maybe maybe you can't like attack enemies in the overworld, but they can attack you, and instead you have to run away from enemies. You have to run away from enemies until you get to a cyberspace stage, and then if you go into cyberspace, you're able to actually interact with enemies and actually able to defeat them. So this way, they would have to basically take existing cyberspace levels and then instead just sprinkle in a few enemies in there sprinkle a few enemies in there, and then boom, you'll be able to attack them with Tails, Knuckles, and Amy. Um, so that would be a possibility. That is a possibility. Um, and then perhaps for the final island, um, you could play as Sage. If you're going through all of the major islands, there's no point to going through Rhea Island since there's not really much to do other than activating 6 towers. Um, but I think that the final island, Aranos Island, um, uh, you might be able to play as Sage in that. If they decide to go this route, then maybe you get to play as Sage on that island. If you're playing as Amy on the first island, Knuckles on the second, Tails on the third, it would make sense to play as Sage on the last island, since she's the only one that's like right there helping you. So that would be interesting. Or heck, who knows? Maybe you get to play as Eggman, and we get to see the return of like Eggman's whole play style from Sonic Adventure 2. That would be interesting. I wouldn't mind that. But that would be the second option. And I feel like while that is a lot more likely than the first option, I don't know if Sega would actually do that, considering how I feel like a lot of fans would be very disappointed in that. A lot of fans I feel like a lot of fans would be incredibly disappointed in that it's not really a new story. It's pretty much the same story, just told from a different point of view. And the roadmap clearly states that this is a new story. So I feel like a lot of people would be very disappointed and would like call Sega out on this kind of BS. So I don't know if they would actually do this. I feel like they would want to put a bit more effort into this new story than just kind of like throwing these new characters in on the islands we've already explored. And like not really giving them a whole lot to do outside of a couple cyberspace levels. So I don't know if Sega would actually do something like that. That feels that feels incredibly cheap and doesn't feel worthy of having update 3 be all about this new story with new playable characters. That it doesn't feel like it's worth that level of hype that this roadmap is giving it. So it is a possibility, and it is definitely more possible than the first option, but I still don't think that's going to be what it is. No. What I think we are going to get is the third option. I think that the third option is going to be something akin to something that Shantae Half Genie Hero did. In Shantae Half Genie Hero, there is a section of the main game where Shantae is possessed by this dark energy and becomes Dark Shantae. And in the story and in the main game, her 3 friends show up, give like this whole speech about how like she's too strong to let this corruption take over her like that. And they basically all they basically all kind of like give their energy to her in order to purify her, much like what we see going on in Sonic Frontiers. We see how Tails, Amy, and Knuckles all basically give up their energy to Sonic in order to purify him from being corrupted. And like once they do that, Shantae is completely better. Shantae is completely better after her friends give her their energy. But later on, we got a massive DLC for that game called Friends to the End, and in that DLC, it basically expands upon that section of the game. It expands upon that small section of the game. That small section that took like 2 minutes. That took like a 2 minute cutscene. It expands upon that and basically shows how her three friends basically went. Her three friends basically their spirits went into Shantae's body and basically fought the corruption from within. Um, they fought the corruption from within Shantae, and it made that section of the story a lot more impactful, and it made it make a lot more. It made it seem a lot more important than the main game. So I do like the story for Friends to the End. The gameplay is a whole time with it. It was frustrating. Um, but I think we might see something very similar here with Sonic Frontiers. I think that given how Tails, Knuckles, and Amy all basically give up their physical forms that they had just gotten back in order to go back to being um in order to go back to being half ghost, as they put it. um I think that we're going to get an expansion on that. That while Sonic was busy running around the final island with Sage, maybe these three were busy um keeping the corruption at bay from within Sonic. That it wasn't just they gave their energy to him and then suddenly he's completely cured. No, maybe it's still in there and they are constantly fighting back against it. Maybe it's like a series. Maybe it's like a series of cyberspace levels. Like you have a few cyberspace levels that you have to go through as Tails, a few that you have to go through as Knuckles, a few you have to go through as Amy, and you're fighting enemies along the way as you're making your way through and trying to destroy all the different corruption that's like within Sonic's body. And I think that doing all of this, I think that doing all of that and getting all of that and like destroying all of the corruption completely, I think that that might lead to a slightly different ending. Like not a significantly different ending, mind you, but like an ending that is just ever so slightly different from the one that we have. And I already think that the ending we have is really good. But I think that we could possibly, by doing this story, we could possibly end up getting a slightly different ending that involves Tails, Knuckles, and Amy a lot more. Instead of them just kind of being tossed away at the start of the climax of the story, like at the end of the fourth island, like they're just kind of tossed away. They're tossed out of the story, and um, it just becomes about Sonic and Sage, which you could make the argument that the story was all about those two to begin with, and that pretty much everybody else, that Knuckles, Tails, Amy, and Eggman, were all pretty much just along for the ride. But like this is like Sonic and Sage's story. You could definitely make that kind of argument, but like Tails, Knuckles, and Amy all basically had massive story implications throughout the first three islands. So it would be nice to see them like actually have something that they need to do during the final island in the big climax of the game. What is it that they are doing? How are they contributing to the fight? I really hope that we end up getting to see something like that, and I think that is honestly the most likely scenario for us. I think that we are quite likely to see a story like that, where uh where we see Amy, Knuckles, and Tails all working together um in order to fight off the corruption within Sonic, or possibly even uh help in the fight against the Supreme Titan or the End, maybe fighting off some of the some of the dark corruption within the Supreme Titan as well. So we get to have a pseudo boss fight, with the three of them. That would be really cool. I would love that. And yeah, I think that is the most likely thing that is going to happen. But what do you guys think? Do you think that we'll end up getting an entirely new island to explore? Do you think we'll end up getting the exact same story but told from the perspective of Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Sage? Or do you think we're going to get a bit of an expansion on Sonic's corruption and having Tails, Knuckles, and Amy basically go into Sonic in order to fight off the corruption from within him, and that's how they end up helping out in the final island? And maybe who knows, maybe we a slightly different ending from the base game. Let me know in the comment box below which of those three options you think is most likely to happen. I would love to talk about this. But with that said, that's going to do it for this video. I have had a blast talking about these little updates and these DLCs, and I'm going to continue to make them as we get more information. So until the next video, I will see you all then. Take care, everybody.